The vast windows of Nexus Station offered an unparalleled view of the swirling nebula beyond, but Dr. Kira Patel barely noticed the spectacular sight anymore. After 3 years as the station's lead xenobiologist, her attention was focused on more pressing matters, specifically the growing tension in the Grand Assembly chamber below. The Varkath delegation had arrived 2 hours ago, their massive frames wrapped in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chamber's lights. They were fearsome to behold, 9 feet of muscled predator with retractable claws that could tear through steel and bioluminescent markings that pulsed with barely contained aggression. But what truly set them apart was their notorious protectiveness of their young. In their 5,000-year recorded history, no Varkath had ever willingly allowed another species near their cubs, which made today's diplomatic summit all the more crucial. Dr. Patel, they're requesting your presence, Lieutenant Reza Karam's voice crackled through her comm unit. The situation has escalated. Kira straightened her uniform and hurried to the lift. She'd spent months preparing for this meeting, studying every scrap of data on Varkath physiology. Even so, nothing could have prepared her for the scene that awaited. The chamber had been cleared of all non-essential personnel. In the center, surrounded by 4 towering Varkath warriors, lay a cub no larger than a human child. Its normally iridescent scales had dulled to a sickly grey, and its breathing came in shallow gasps. High Matriarch Kivar, the leader of the Varkath delegation, turned her fierce gaze upon Kira. Human, your kind claims expertise in biological sciences. My youngest clutch bearer falls ill, and our healers cannot determine the cause. Kira maintained eye contact, knowing that among Varkath, looking away signaled either deception or submission. High Matriarch, I would be honored to help, but I understand your species' traditions regarding cubs. I won't approach without your explicit permission. Kavor's biolights flickered in complex patterns, surprise, perhaps, or consideration. You understand our ways, yet still offer aid. I do, and I also understand that if you accept my help, it will break 5 millennia of tradition. That's not a decision to make lightly. The chamber fell silent save for the cub's labored breathing. Kivor's massive frame seemed to coil with internal struggle. Finally she spoke. If you deceive us, if you bring any harm to this cub, the Varkath will rain destruction upon your worlds until nothing remains but ash. I understand, Kira replied steadily, but right now your cub needs help. Will you trust me? Kavor's biolights pulsed once, bright and decisive. Approach. Kira moved forward slowly, our medical scanner already gathering data. The cub's vital signs were critical. Some sort of severe allergic reaction, her readings suggested. She had brought her emergency kit, thank goodness, including the universal antihistamine compound she'd developed. High Matriarch, I need to administer medication. It will look like I'm hurting the cub, but I promise you, this will help. Kira held up the hypospray, making every movement deliberate and visible. Kavor's claws extended involuntarily, her biolights flashing warning patterns. But she nodded. The moment Kira pressed the hypospray to the cub's scales, 4 sets of claws extended fully, and battle growls filled the chamber. She forced herself to focus solely on her patient, monitoring its vital signs as the medication took effect. Gradually, the cub's breathing eased. Color returned to its scales, and its biolights began to flicker weakly. The cub had a severe allergic reaction, Kira explained, still monitoring her scanner, likely to something in the station's air filtration system. I've administered a compound that will prevent further reactions. He'll need another dose in 24 hours, but he should make a full recovery. The cub chirped weakly and tried to raise its head. Cavor moved with shocking speed for something so large, gathering her cub in massive clawed arms. But instead of moving away from Kira, she remained close. "You saved my clutch, bearer," Cavor said, her voice rougher than usual. "You did not hesitate, even with death one wrong move away. Why?" Kira smiled gently. "Because he needed help. Sometimes it's as simple as that." Cavor's biolights shifted to a pattern Kira had never seen before. "Perhaps," the matriarch said slowly, "we have misunderstood humans. Your soft exterior hides something unexpected, something worthy of trust." The news spread through the station like wildfire. A human had treated a Varkath cub and lived. By evening, 2 other delegations had approached Kira about their own cub's health concerns. As she updated her medical logs that night, she realized that this wasn't just about healing anymore. Every cub she helped was a bridge between species, every successful treatment a step toward a different future. The nebula outside her window seemed brighter somehow, its swirling colors a reminder that the galaxy's most beautiful things often came from the most unlikely combinations. News of Kira's success with the Varkath spread through the Galactic diplomatic channels like a solar flare. Within weeks, Nexus Station's medical bay had been expanded to accommodate a steady stream of predator species seeking human medical expertise. What had started as a single act of trust was evolving into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Silvathi were the next to arrive, their crystalline bodies casting prismatic light across the station's corridors. Unlike the Varkath's imposing presence, the Silvathi were living weapons of elegance. Their diamond-hard bodies housed minds capable of telepathic hunting, and their young were kept in heavily guarded crystal nests. They had never before left their home system with their offspring. "This is entirely irregular," Director Halon observed from his office overlooking the medical bay. The station's administrator looked exhausted, his usually pristine uniform showing signs of wear. "Dr. Patel, do you understand what kind of political pressure you've brought upon us?" Kira stood at attention, watching through the window as her team prepared for the Silvathi cub's arrival. "With respect, Director, I understand exactly what's at stake. That's why we can't turn them away. The merchant colonies are already filing protests. They claim we're disrupting thousands of years of established trade relationships by allowing predator species to congregate here." He passed her a data tablet filled with diplomatic complaints. "And the consortium of free worlds suggests we're building some sort of military alliance." "We're healing sick children," Kira countered, her voice firm. "Since when is that a political act?" "Everything is political out here, Doctor. You of all people should know that." Before she could respond, her comm unit chimed urgently. "Dr. Patel," her assistant's voice was tense. "The Silvathi matriarch is requesting you personally. Something's wrong with the transit pods." Kira was moving before the message finished. The Silvathi cubs had been transported in specialized containers designed to maintain their precise environmental needs. If those pods failed, she reached the medical bay's receiving area to find 6 Silvathi warriors in a defensive formation around 3 dimming transit pods. Their crystalline bodies had shifted to attack configuration, edges sharp enough to slice through hull plating. "The thermal regulators are failing," the Silvathi matriarch, second light of dawn, announced. Her voice chimed like breaking glass. "Our young will shatter if their core temperature drops further." Kira's mind raced. Silvathi cubs needed exact temperatures to maintain their crystalline structure during early development. Too cold, and they become brittle. Too hot, and their molecular bonds would weaken. The pods were designed to prevent exactly this situation. "Let me scan the pods," she requested, already reaching for her diagnostic tools. The warrior's edges gleamed dangerously, but second light of dawn gave a harmonic command, and they allowed Kira to approach. The pod's power systems were intact, but the temperature regulation software had been corrupted. Not failed, corrupted. This was no accident. "Someone sabotaged these pods," Kira announced, her fingers flying over the control panels. "But the hardware still works. If we can bypass the software." She looked up at the matriarch. "I need your permission to manually regulate the temperature. It's risky. I'll have to rely on direct readings and your guidance." Second light of dawn's faceted surface shifted, reflecting her internal debate. Our young had never been touched by outside energies. The risk is less than certain death, Kira finished. "I know I'm asking for unprecedented trust, but we're running out of time." The matriarch's surface chimed a complex harmony. "Proceed. But know that if our young shatter, so too will every human on this station." Kira nodded grimly and began the delicate process of manually adjusting each pod's temperature. She worked with absolute focus, watching both her readings and the subtle color changes in the crystalline cubs that indicated their condition. Second light of dawn provided constant feedback through harmonics that Kira's translator barely kept up with. Degree by degree, the cubs stabilized. Their structures strengthened, and their own bioluminescence began to pulse with healthy rhythms. When the last pod registered normal readings, Kira finally allowed herself to breathe. "Your young are safe," she said, stepping back from the pods. But this wasn't an accident. Someone tried to force a diplomatic incident. Second light of dawn's surface rippled with colors that the translator couldn't process. "Yes, we suspected such treachery might be attempted. That is why we chose to come here. Not despite the risk, but because of it." "I don't understand." "We wish to know if humans would help even when doing so might bring them harm. If you would stand by your principles when faced with threats and political pressure." The matriarch's form shifted, becoming less rigid, more open. "You have proven something remarkable about your species, Dr. Petal. You are soft-bodied, yet you stand firm. Physically weak, yet you show strength in other ways." Later that night, reviewing security footage with station investigators, Kira discovered that 3 other attempts at sabotage had been prevented by an unlikely alliance. Varkath warriors working alongside human security teams, guarding the approaches to the medical bay. The sight of them working together, predator and prey united in protection of the vulnerable, brought a smile to her face. But her joy was tempered by worry. Someone wanted to stop what was happening here, wanted badly enough to risk war with multiple predator species. As she stared at the security feeds, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The real test of trust between species was still to come. The warning came shortly before station midnight. A priority transmission from the Zyra Collective, one of the galaxy's oldest spacefaring predator species. Their message was brief but devastating. An unknown pathogen was attacking their cubs' neural systems, and traditional treatments had failed. They were requesting permission to bring 300 sick cubs to Nexus Station. 300! Director Hallen's voice cracked as he paced his office. The station's lights had dimmed to night cycle, casting long shadows across his worried face. "We barely have facilities for 30, let alone hundreds. And the Zyra, they're telepathic apex predators. One wrong move, and they could drive half the station's population insane." Kira studied the preliminary medical data streaming across her tablet. The symptoms match reports I'm seeing from 4 other sectors. Sir, this isn't isolated. We're looking at an epidemic targeting predator species young. And you think that's a coincidence? Holland stopped pacing to face her. First the sabotage attempts, now this. Someone's orchestrating these events, Doctor. The question is why? Before Kira could respond, her tablet chimed with new alerts. Similar distress calls were coming in from the Varkath territories and the Silvathi crystal worlds. The disease was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. We need to act now, Kira insisted. Whatever the politics behind this, there are cubs dying while we debate. The merchant colonies have already withdrawn their ambassadors, Hallam countered. They're threatening economic sanctions against any station that accepts these refugees. We're talking about the collapse of trade routes that have existed for millennia. A new voice joined the conversation, the deep, resonant tones of High Matriarch Kivor. The Varkath leader had entered silently. Her biolights dimmed in what Kira had learned was a sign of grief. Then let them collapse, Kivor declared. What worth is trade if we lose our future? My own clutch bearers show signs of this sickness. We have tried everything within our knowledge. Now we must try something beyond it. The station's comm system crackled again. Second light of dawn's crystalline harmonics filled the office. The Silvathi conclave stands with the Varkath. We too have cubs showing symptoms. We too choose trust over tradition. Hallan sank into his chair, the weight of the moment visible in his posture. The station can't accommodate them all, even if we converted every available space. Then we don't use the station, Kira interjected, an idea forming. The Horizon Initiative colony ship is still docked here for repairs. It's designed to sustain 10,000 colonists in long-term medical stasis. We could convert it into a floating hospital. That ship is meant to establish humanity's first deep space colony, Holland protested. The initiative won't just hand it over. They will, came a new voice. Admiral Chen strode into the office, her initiative uniform immaculate despite the late hour. Because I'm ordering them to. Sometimes humanity's first steps into deep space don't look like we expected. What followed was the largest cooperative effort in known galactic history. The Horizon was transformed in days, its massive holds converted into specialized treatment areas. Engineers worked alongside human medical teams to modify environmental systems. Silvathi crystal shapers created containment units that could adapt to any species' needs. 1 year after the Great Epidemic, Nexus Station had transformed. The Horizon, once intended as a colony ship, had become a permanent medical research facility. Its halls echoed with the sounds of cubs from across the galaxy, brought not for emergency treatment now, but for routine care and cultural exchange. Kira stood in her favorite observation room, watching a young Varkath play fight with a Silvathi child, while their parents looked on. The sight still amazed her, predator species not just tolerating each other's presence, but actively seeking it out. Did you ever imagine this? Admiral Chen asked, joining her at the window. When you treated that first Varkath cub, did you think it would lead here? Kira smiled, remembering the tension of that first encounter. I just wanted to help. Everything else. This was beyond imagining. The station's comm system activated, announcing the arrival of more ships. Not emergency transports this time, but diplomatic vessels. The Galactic Council was convening, and for the first time in recorded history, every predator species had sent representatives. The merchant colonies had been forced to adapt. Their monopoly on interspecies trade was broken, replaced by direct diplomatic relations fostered through medical cooperation. They remained important players in galactic politics, but no longer held the power to keep species divided. "They're calling it the compassion doctrine," Chen said, handing Kira a data tablet. "Every signatory species agrees to provide medical aid to any cubs in need, regardless of origin. They're using human medical facilities as the model." "It's more than that," Kira observed, watching a human doctor demonstrate a new treatment technique to a group of alien healers. "We're proving that strength isn't just about claws or telepathy or crystalline armor. Sometimes the greatest strength is the willingness to help, even when it's risky." The observation room's door slid open, admitting High Matriarch Kivor. The Varkath leader's biolights pulsed with calm colors that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "The council session will begin soon," Kivor announced. "They wish to hear from the human who started it all." Kira turned from the window, surprised. "I didn't start this. We all did together." "Perhaps," Kivor agreed, her massive form moving with newfound grace. "But you showed us the way. You taught us that trust is not weakness, that compassion is not surrender." She gestured to the cubs playing below. "You showed us that the fiercest predators need not fear the gentle touch of a trusted friend." As Kira followed Kivor to the council chamber, she reflected on how far they'd come. The galaxy was changing, not through war or economic pressure, but through something far more powerful: the simple act of caring for each other's children. In the end, that was humanity's greatest contribution to galactic society. Not technology or military might, but the demonstration that true strength often comes in the softest forms, and that trust, once given, can build bridges across the deepest divides. The stars shone bright through Nexus Station's windows, no longer distant and cold, but full of promise. In their light, predator and prey, strong and gentle, all found their place in a galaxy transformed by trust. The cubs began arriving within the week. Hundreds of ships, representing species that had been mortal enemies for generations, formed an orderly queue near the station. On the Horizon's medical decks, Kira led a combined team of human doctors and alien healers in fighting against time and disease. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a rare break, Kira noticed something odd in the neural scans of cubs from different species. The pattern of deterioration was too precise, too similar across radically different biologies. "This isn't a natural pathogen," she announced to her assembled team. "It's engineered, designed to target specific neural pathways common to predator species. Someone created this." The revelation sent shockwaves through the gathered healers. Ages-old instincts flared. Predator species were used to fighting threats they could see, not invisible enemies that struck at their young. "How do we fight an unseen enemy?" a Ziri healer asked, their telepathic voice thick with frustration. Together, Kira answered simply. This weapon was designed assuming our species would never cooperate. Its creators didn't expect humans to help, didn't expect predator species to trust us. That's their weakness. Working around the clock, the combined medical teams began making progress. Human intuition and adaptability paired with alien knowledge and technology. Cubs who had been given days to live began showing signs of recovery. But victory came with a price. As more predator species diverted ships and resources to protect their young, the galaxy's carefully balanced power structure began to shift. Trade routes lay abandoned, diplomatic protocols were ignored, and age-old alliances strained to breaking point. And somewhere in the shadows, those who had engineered this crisis were watching, waiting to see how their carefully laid plans would unravel in the face of unexpected unity. The real question was no longer whether different species could trust each other, but whether that trust would be enough to survive what was coming. The truth emerged during a routine scan of a newly arrived Varkath ship. Kira's team detected trace particles in its hull, remnants of a cloaked vessel that had shadowed it through hyperspace. When similar traces appeared on other ships, a pattern emerged. They'd been following the outbreak, Kira explained to the assembled leaders in the Horizon's converted conference room. Tracking its spread, probably gathering data on its effectiveness. Admiral Chen studied the particle analysis. These energy signatures match merchant colony technology. But why would they? Because they fear us, High Matriarch Kevor interrupted, our biolights pulsing with controlled rage. Not just my people, or the Silvathi, or the Zaire. They fear all of us, including humans. They fear what we might become together. Second Light of Dawn's crystalline form shimmered in agreement. The merchant colonies have maintained their power through division. They broker deals between predator species who would never meet face to face. They profit from our distrust. And now that trust is building, Kira added, they're trying to break it. Force us back into isolation by threatening our young. The revelation sparked immediate action. Varkath warships began escort missions for incoming medical transports. Silvathi crystal ships formed defensive screens around the horizon. Human tactical experts coordinated it all, turning competition into cooperation. But the merchant colonies had anticipated resistance. A fleet of their ships emerged from hyperspace, their automated message clear: disperse the gathered species or face economic blockade. What they hadn't anticipated was the response. The combined fleet, predator and human ships flying in formation, didn't fire a shot. Instead, they transmitted a single message, broadcast simultaneously by every vessel. Our children are not your leverage. Faced with unprecedented unity from species they had kept divided for centuries, the merchant colony fleet retreated. Within hours, their leadership was calling for emergency negotiations. In the Horizon's medical bay, life continued. Cubs of a dozen species played together in specially designed recovery areas, while their parents looked on in wonder. Human doctors worked tirelessly alongside alien healers, sharing knowledge, building trust, saving lives. The epidemic had been meant to destroy them. Instead, it had created something entirely new.